Hey, Colin.
Hey guys, sorry I had to set up another link because this one wasn't in the broker thing. So I'm joining, but I'm hoping I'm able to be the host here.
I'm super confused that the link wasn't in the. It's a recurring meeting, so it wouldn't say
Yeah,
contract.
it showed the next recurring meeting was tomorrow's Jumpstart and not this one. So I had set up a new one, but I just chucked it when I realized nobody was there. Okay. All right, let me turn off that music there. And let me get us all organized and then we will start recording. Okay. Oh, we are already recording. Excellent. Okay. All right. So if anyone has some questions, does everyone know how to use, if you click at the very bottom of your screen where it says participants, and you should be able to raise your hand, but I'm not seeing that that's been enabled either. All right, well then, if you have a question, just unmute. Oh, Emily learned it. Okay, there it is. So yeah, it should be that you can do that, but I'm not seeing that it's as obvious as it usually is on my other meetings.
I'll be at a computer. I'll be sitting in front of a computer so I can moderate and look for unmutes and hands and stuff to help Colin in just about 3 minutes. So
No, it's fine. Okay. In the meantime, if anyone has a burning question, you can just unmute yourself and we'll get going from there. All right, so let's get this party started. Does everyone have the PDF that we asked you to have? I can put it in the chat right now of the contract changes. I should ask who doesn't have that, because I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody to make sure everyone has got something to follow along with. So copy that here. And then okay, that PDF I've just put there in the chat for everybody. So if you don't have it, click that. Following along will be so much easier. All righty. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Excellent. Okay. So to start this whole shenanigans going, I do want to have a quick disclaimer here. New licensees, if you have not taken Jumpstart contracts class, this might be a little bit of a nightmare for you. I would recommend that maybe you wait, do Jumpstart's contracts class tomorrow, and then come back and watch the recording of this class. It might make more sense. You are obviously welcome to stay, but it might make more sense to do it in that order. This is going to be really more for people that are already comfortable with the contracts, because we're really just highlighting the changes from previous years to this year. Okay, so starting this off, we have 4 new forms this year, 2 of which came out in the middle of the year that you will be familiar with. We have the COVID-19 release that you may remember us talking about. It's a hold harmless form. And the COVID-19 amendment, which at the very beginning during shutdown, that form seemed a lot more relevant. It was talking about if you have timelines and things that may have to get pushed because of the pandemic and because of shutdowns. I haven't seen as many people using this now as they are just the hold harmless form, which is more about your health. And if you contract COVID in the process of looking for a home, you understand you're not going to hold us liable. The COVID amendment and addendum, for the most part, yes, our supply chains are a little bit affected still, but on the whole, business has been kind of back to normal to some degree. So depending on what you're doing as to whether or not you really want to decide if you're going to use the COVID amendment or addendum. The other two that are important to know about is, and I don't know how many of you guys are dealing with leasing. We don't usually have that many, but this is new. The residential lease agreement for single family, if the broker is acting as the property manager. That is not something that even used to be allowed at Village in the past. And if you do use this form, you do still need to have your personal interest disclosure form. So that is new, and the investment property addendum form. So in scrolling to these, hang on, let me get my table of contents here. I had this all set up on another page, but it didn't want to let me share it. So when we are looking at the investment property addendum, if it is going to be an investment property, you want to make sure you're disclosing all of that. So that's a big part of what that's going to be. So at the bottom, for those of you who are following along, you'll see all of the red line changes are at the beginning with the table of contents, and then it goes through each of these forms one by one. So here's the COVID-19 release. Here's the COVID addendum and amendment. This is your broker acting as property manager. And then last but not least, as we were just talking about, the investment property addendum. So the next form that we really want to get into that had major changes is going to be, and this was mainly a housekeeping issue. So your right to sell listing agreements for designated agency, seller agency, as well as lot and land. All of them, we have gone and for all of them, we are cleaning up this language here. Listing date, listing expiration date. We are now putting it as effective date. And then also, this is an important change, marketing of property commencement date. So with clear cooperation and our MLS rules and all the rest, we all know that the day you have your listing agreement is not necessarily the day you're going to be going active or the day you're going to start actively marketing. The day you start actively marketing, you must be on the MLS within 48 hours. So this helps clarify a little bit of that. So they have added this for the marketing of property commencement date. Carryover clause, this is once again just a little bit of housekeeping. And these changes have been made to all of these agreements to be consistent. And every year, for those of you who are newer, you will find this will be very common every year when we have the changes, that if they make a change to one listing agreement, they will try to make it consistently across all listing agreements. Same thing with buyer agreements, etc. And speaking of buyer agreements, we've got some blanket changes to all of the buyer agreements. So in another sort of housekeeping issue, we've got here, for consideration, mutual promises, blah, blah, blah. This agreement is entered into on this date, effective date. And then you've got brokers shall act versus the way we had it before is hereby employs. This is really just housekeeping language. It's not a whole lot we need to focus on. This does not really change how we do business, but just pointing out this is what's different. Once again, effective date. You're going to see this change consistently throughout all of these forms, that this is what they have moved to. And agreement to show property. Once again, we're doing more of this housekeeping instead of, with the effective date and instead of hereby granting. The most important change in the agreement to show property is audio video recording. So we've addressed this in our purchase and sale agreement a couple of years ago. Why would we not have this in agreement to show property? It didn't really make sense. So once again, for consistency's sake, we want to make sure that we are letting people know of the possibility of audio video recording. You guys have all been taught, never have crucial conversations inside the house and even the front porch, because Ring doorbells can record things as well. So this is just another way to let buyers know, even if they are unrepresented in an agency contract, that we need to be aware of this and let clients and customers understand the importance of video recording. I think I see a hand up.
That's me, Collyn. I was just based on some feedback yesterday during Jumpstart, for those that are working on 13-inch or smaller laptops, would you be able to zoom in on the document so it takes up a little bit more of the width of your screen there? So for those
Absolutely. Let's see. Is that better for everybody?
Yes.
Is that enough, or do I need to do a little more? Okay.
That's an improvement. That's great. Thank you, Collyn.
Sure, my pleasure. Okay. So anyway, just to make sure everybody understands, agreement to show property is one that a lot of people still ask me about. So I want to make sure that if you are working with an unrepresented seller, before you show your client the property, please have this signed. Just a little reminder. 90% of the time I'm talking with agents, they didn't know about this and they are getting it signed after the fact. You are supposed to have this signed before you show the property. So just a little reminder. Okay, exclusive right to market for lease, not property management. Once again, a little housekeeping with effective date. Property condition disclosure. If leases are not assumable, it'll be seller's responsibility to pay balance. They have stricken that. Most of this cleaning up that they are doing here is going to just be more in the presentation of how these forms are done. All these property condition disclosures, exemptions, they want them all to match. And so this is once again massively a housekeeping issue. This is how it was laid out before. This is how it's laid out now, so that it corresponds more to the forms we already are using. One big change that I want to address on this is, oh, and by the way, back to the agreement to show property. Remember, that is only for one property and one buyer when you use it. Just in case anybody is forgetting that. It's not a blanket agreement to show property to 10 people. So the disclosures here, there's one thing that in the septic that I want to kind of talk about just a little bit there at the very end here. So they've decided to combine some of the language here that deals with perking and soil absorption. And so it's just sewer moratoriums. Your clients always need to be aware, and most of them aren't. And this is going to be both buyer due diligence and seller due diligence if they don't understand about their septic system, and if they were permitted to put in their septic system during a sewer moratorium, it can have a future obligation to the buyer to connect to sewer. So this is the kind of information that you want to find out as best you can before listing. And it's the kind of information when you have a buyer, you want to make sure that you're looking into, especially out in Wilson County and some of these areas that are a long way from city sewer. Okay, working with a real estate professional. So as an agreement to show property, this is one when you've got unrepresented clients or customers, I should say. This is just making it more consistent with language we already have in the purchase and sale agreement. So this discusses recording devices again. So once again, we're trying to be consistent in our disclosures to everyone about the presence or potential presence of recording devices. Basically, I'm not a lawyer. We're not going to get into law, but the law currently states that you can only record if you are party to the conversation. But we all know that these smart homes and things have that. And so it's best to, I mean, there is also written in some ways that there's no expectation of privacy. So just keep all of that in mind when you're talking to your customers and clients about the possibility of recording. It's just something that I'm hearing more and more about conversations that were had that the sellers hear that they shouldn't have because of these devices. Disclaimer notice. So, all right, we all know that the disclaimer notice goes on and on and on about what we aren't. And they finally decided this year that it's easier to tell them what we are than what we aren't. So we've taken out, we're not attorneys, we are not structural or environmental engineers or whatever. Let's just talk about what we are. We are bringing together buyers and sellers in real estate. So there's language, and you know, the whole stay in your lane thing will always apply. We don't try to act as inspectors, engineers, attorneys, anything. We be the source of the source. We send them where they need to go. This language was just cleaning it up a little bit of, rather than making a laundry list of what we don't do, let's just focus on what we do. Square footage, this was just another way of saying that there are multiple sources from which square footage property can be obtained versus there are many ways of measuring square footage. It's more of a linguistic change because sources versus measuring is a distinction they were trying to make. Your sources can be your tax IDs, I mean your tax records. It can be from an appraisal. It can be from somebody who came and measured for a floor plan. So there are lots of different sources, and it's always important on the MLS for us to identify the source of square footage that we are referencing to. Okay, 47-51, boundary lines, easements, encroachments, road maintenance, and acreage. A survey can provide helpful information, including whether the road is home to a public or private road. So this seems to be coming up a lot more as we are pushing more out into rural areas. That there's a lot of easements with shared driveways and things like that. And this is just sort of helping clarify that that's a possibility. And it's something that people need to take into their due diligence period. Reliance. Okay, this is new. And this is, I think, pretty important. And this is all this stuff that's in the new and improved disclaimer is another reason that Village is bringing the disclaimer back as required for 2021, because there are some things here that we think are important. You understand is your responsibility to determine the size, location, condition of the property acceptable to prior to signing a contract. This whole paragraph came, and I'm not going to read to you, so you can see what else is there. You know, talking about marketing materials, electronic print, all these things are not going to give you the full picture. This is addressing people that are buying properties sight unseen. We've all had them now at this point. If you haven't had them, you've heard about them. All these people coming in, tight market, they are buying these properties sight unseen. And they have to understand that we can't, odors. I think that's my favorite one right here, odors. I can't convey to you as your agent what the odor is. And you have to understand that if you are buying a property sight unseen, we can't guarantee any of this. So I think this is a really important paragraph for people that are buying property sight unseen. If you have a client buying a property sight unseen, I hope you are putting in a viewing contingency.
Well, I'm definitely going to be putting in an odor contingency.
Right. I mean, you know, ain't nothing like some cat piss to kill a deal. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Also, this is something else that has come up a lot more from out-of-town buyers than it has been our homegrown locals. I'm sure many of you have had the situation where client buys the property and then the new owner of the property says, I want all the pictures taken down off the MLS. It's a privacy thing. Well, even if we agree to do that, which is really not in anyone's best interest as realtors, for people that are trying to comp properties, they need those photos to be able to see how this property compares to others like it when appraisers and other realtors are trying to comp properties, get appraisals done. So even if we agreed to take the photos down of our listing, or we asked the listing agent to take the photos down, the fact is they syndicate. We can't control where in the interwebs these photos have gone. If they've been pulled to realtor.com, they've been pulled to Zillow. So basically this kind of lets you as the realtor off the hook for the buyers who's saying, you've got to take those photos down off the MLS. This says here, you acknowledge photographs, marketing materials, digital media used in the marketing may continue to remain in publication after closing. The broker shall not be liable for any uses of photographs, marketing materials, or digital media, which the broker is not in control. So this should kind of take some heat off of you guys for those buyers who are pressuring you with that. And the other thing I want to address here in this one is broker should not be liable for uses of photographs, marketing materials. Okay, this is something else that if you're a listing agent, I want to make sure you don't do. But an example of if somebody photoshopped in a fire into the fireplace, that's misrepresentation. So as listing agents, we aren't going to do that, but it's also our job as buyer's agents to make sure that they understand and you really do your due diligence. If there's a fake fire in the fireplace in the photo in the MLS, make sure you ask that listing agent if it doesn't say, it should say in the property condition disclosure, but is this fireplace functioning? Because that fire, that fake fire, will lead one to believe such a thing. So it's once again just trying to have people be very careful these days with the manipulation of images, is that there's a line between misrepresentation and aesthetically pleasing. So be careful you don't cross that line. Okay, we're on to the fun stuff, the purchase and sale agreement. So, as always, what do we say all the time? When in doubt, ask for what you want. As I said in the sales meeting when we went over this, and I lamented in our Tennessee Realtors meeting, I'd really hoped we'd be able to address more smart home components. But unfortunately, this year it was key fobs. So they have stricken the entry key or master code for digital locks and put all available keys, key fobs, access codes, master codes, other methods necessary to access the property, including mailboxes and or amenities. I would have loved to have seen something addressing smart home components in more detail. However, their stance on it is the technology is changing so fast that they felt like whatever we put in here is potentially going to be outdated in no time. And so remember, if we don't tell you this once, we'll tell you 100 times. Any smart home components you see and your client wants or has an expectation of getting, ask for it, because it is not listed in here. Okay. This is cleaning up a little bit of language about notification. Nothing really changing there that is of note to change anything about how this area functions. This, I thought, actually, this and is sort of an important and, because there's always some debate about termite, the discovery of termites after the inspection period. This here is trying to clarify that you are providing written notice to the seller of describing termites. You can't just discover termites and not give the seller written notice, and it needs to be during the inspection period. So this and was a good add to make sure people understand that this is not something that you really want to be verbally discussing. This is something you need in writing. Especially since the expectation is that if there is an active termite infestation, your seller is going to be required to repair it. Okay, so we are now down here via repair replacement proposal or equivalent written notice. Believe it or not, that wasn't there before. That helps. Once again, we are clarifying how we are wanting repair proposals to be dealt with. Written notice. Also, this is going to help tremendously. The receipt by seller of the above stated written list or repair replacement proposal marks the end of the inspection period and beginning of the resolution period. Yes, I am going to read that one straight to you just like that, because how many times do we have people confused saying, well, I had a 10-day inspection period and you gave me the list of repairs on the 5th and the resolution period's only 2 days, say, and they think they have until the end of the 10 days to even acknowledge or send a counter proposal or anything. If your inspection period is 10 days and a repair proposal is in play in 5 days, your resolution period starts on day 5 then. I mean, you are starting your resolution period right at the time that you start with your repair proposal. So if you want to start, if you're trying to get things going quickly and you're on top of the ball and you've got your list of repairs already, that's great. You don't have to wait till the end of the 10 days to submit it. But just know, if you are counting on that 5 days, don't submit your proposals if you need that extra time. If you've got other inspections you need to do, don't cut yourself short if you need that extra time. So this clarifies that. Your inspection period is marked at the end when your repair replacement proposal starts. When you guys start negotiating repairs, you're now in the resolution period. Buyer and seller, and this, once again, this is just to be consistent. Buyer and seller are going to acknowledge that marked photographs, marketing materials, blah, blah, blah. This is the same as we saw before. We're not liable for the use of photographs, marketing materials. So now we have that covered in more than one location. It's in the disclaimer and it's in the purchase and sale agreement, just to make sure everybody sees it. Seller's additional obligations down here. We are just getting a little bit more detail here on septic again and addressing sewer moratoriums. So like we had earlier, we're just being consistent in addressing this here. Licensee cell phone. Kind of can't believe it's taken us this long to put this one here, but there it is. So we are taking out this HOA stuff here to sort of clean it up and have it a little more consistent in one line here and adding the cell phone number.
Did they get rid of the fax numbers yet?
No, I don't think they did.
Good. I might still use that next year.
But they did we'll see later, they did get rid of a Yellow Pages reference.
That's nice.
Okay, new construction purchase and sale agreement. A lot of this is going to mirror our regular purchase and sale agreement. So a lot of these changes are just to be consistent for our purchase and sale agreement. So there's not going to be a whole lot different here. There will be some, but most of this is just going to be consistency's sake in these changes. So making notification with a capital N, because we have a form that we use for notification. So it's now become capital N, and that's something we've seen before, and we're consistently doing that. I think this is always a good clarification. You know, sometimes people get a little carried away with the blue tape, and so in need of cosmetic repair, those are things that are legitimate, and they are going to be on the punch list. And so, you know, when you see that, you know, the drywall's been dinged when they were carrying ladders around or whatever, yeah, that can be on your punch list. So, so there's, you know, there's a lot of cosmetic things in your punch list that are fair, and I think addressing that and making that a little more clear is good.
I'd like to add something right there, if I may, Collyn. Just as a reminder, obviously, this is regarding new construction contract, which isn't used very often. So if you find yourself that the builder is including their contract, make sure you're referencing or using some of this legal approved or reviewed language when determining or adding to a builder's contract about the punch list process. Make sense? Any questions on that? Because a lot of times some of these builder contracts for infill lots, They're all have kind of adapting ones that they've gotten from other fellow builders. And so sometimes it's not clear in there. And the other thing I'd recommend is when you are doing your cosmetic walkthrough of after you blue tape, take pictures of the wall and potentially include that in your written list as a wall reference. And maybe you put a piece of tape on it and you take a black Sharpie and write wall 1 or wall 2. We all sort of work in this good faith that we'll figure it out. There's nothing worse than when you have a buyer you're representing and you go back to check it and you can't see, or they would expected that you were taking notes. I see Virginia. I want to hear your opinion. I see you nodding over there, Virginia. This is a real thing. So
It's amazing how all walls look alike when you take a picture with a piece of blue tape.
True.
But no, Teddy, I had a question for you. Will a builder really allow you to add language to their contract? I found that that's not always well received.
It isn't, but my experience is, and I appreciate your grace in having this bit of this chat here, Collyn, just because it brings up a really pertinent point, is so much new construction and infills going on. And as we're in sellers markets, less builders or sellers are open to changes to their contract. I love someone's point, Karen Baker's point yesterday. She goes, I know the way to win. In this market, you just tell, why don't the seller fill out the contract and we'll just sign and accept it. You let us know what you want. But yes, if you talk to my experience is obviously it goes a lot better if I talk to the agent in advance and I ask them, what is the builder's customary process for handling the punch walk? And then based on what they share with me, I say, is that written in your contract or specified anywhere? Just so I could give a written explanation of that to my buyer. I sort of use that excuse. And if not, then I'll sort of like draft up some bullets and add that as, if there is no space in the builder contract, as an addendum, amendment, change, adding addendum. So that's my experience, Virginia. Yeah, they typically they hate it. And sometimes I just have to work on good faith that I want to win the deal and I don't want to, I just have to trust that they're going to allow us to go through it. But it never hurts to have written account, right? Even if it was an email to that agent saying, based on our conversation, I'm submitting an offer and, based on our chat regarding the builder's punch list process, this is what I understand the process will go. Could you confirm that? At least I would have that. Cool.
For those of you lucky enough to even get to use the TAR new construction contract, that's a gift in itself, because most of the time you're going to be using a builder contract, and yeah, it's never going to be in your skewed to your buyer's advantage. It's always going to be set up with a lot of grace to the builder.
It will. And we do have some new construction classes coming up, so keep a lookout for those. And we do, as Collyn mentioned, there is a contracts class. We are going through the entire contract as though you've never seen it before tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. with Karen Baker and Angela Garner, our Franklin, two of our brokers. And so tune in tomorrow for that, and the Zoom links in the calendar, and that will be for all Jumpstart and anyone else that'd like to attend. So thanks, Collyn.
Yeah. And, guys, if you haven't taken a contracts class in a couple of years, I would recommend, doing a contracts class with Jumpstart every year, every couple of years. It never hurts, especially if you've, had a little downtime, just want to get refreshed. It's super valuable. So the rest of this stuff here is just mirroring what the other purchase and sale agreement changes were, as far as dealing with septic, as far as acknowledging the photographs, marketing materials, the HOA, everything we saw before, this just carries over. And the same for the lot and land purchase and sale agreement. All this same language is just carrying over for consistency. Lease agreement for single family dwelling. So the key fob, access codes, all of that came over from the purchase and sale agreement has now been transferred over here to be consistent with the lease agreement. They've decided that having all of this, the deed book, register of deeds for a lease, just seemed like overkill. So they have taken out some of this stuff that is in the purchase and sale agreement that did not really seem apropos to a lease agreement. 5 p.m. local time for the grace period. That was a nice clarification for people who work in leasing. Most of us do not, but for those that do, Congratulations. I bet you like that. Liability insurance. You know, tenants are supposed to have personal property insurance because if somebody breaks into their apartment and steals their stuff, but there's also liability. If somebody falls in your apartment, you know, it's just another layer of protection that you need to have. Let's see. Sitting room. There you go. Nice little ad, but I can't say that it's really life-changing one way or the other. Once again, this is the same, we're addressing effective date that we've seen through some of the other agreements. So this is just another carryover that we want to be consistent in carrying over. I shouldn't say we, the forms committee. Let's see. Here we go. The right of first refusal addendum. We like this one. We've got, wait, did this skip a page? Hang on.
Can I just share something real quick, Collyn, while you're finding that?
Mhm.
There was a question about if you're doing a lease back, yes. Anytime somebody is renting property of any type, you either need to have renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. That's for you personally and for every client you know, because their contents also in their car are all covered under renter's insurance. Your car insurance doesn't cover contents in your car. So your laptop or your watch or whatever, your AirPods, your phone that gets stolen out of your car, it is not covered on car insurance. Not to mention all the contents in your home. You should never put yourself at risk for that exposure. It's way too cheap. And my other value add is encourage all your clients to take a video tour of their home and contents, open up every drawer, just so you have a tour of your home in case there was a fire or a loss, you at least had some visual record of what you had. So, and I would not get involved with doing leasing, be really cautious to this. I mean, a lease back is one thing for tenant occupancy, but doing a lease in real estate, unless you have some experience in that, I would caution to jump into that with just your knowledge based on these forms. It's kind of a specialized form of our licensing. And if you want more information on it, I'd be happy to direct you. We also did a class that Virginia helped create and around leasing your own property. So if that's in the recordings as well.
Yeah, property management is a whole different animal that will require extra education, extra riders on your E&O insurance. So definitely get enough information up front before you decide to embark upon that. Okay, buyer's first right of refusal addendum. So as Zach and I were talking about in the sales meeting, you know, it had written in there 5 days. This is negotiable. And so taking that language out and allowing that to be negotiable frees us up a little bit. So that way, when you've got a home sale contingency and you want to make sure that the seller wants to make sure the buyer is going to have that property on the market in a certain amount of time, you can negotiate that time frame. There's also a little bit of extra protection for the seller here. You know, it says buyer is going to submit proof of the listing to the seller, and you'll see later with our notification form that there's a lot more bulleted protections for the seller. But basically, we are giving the seller a little bit more cover here. Seller can make written demand for compliance via the notification form, as we talked about, or equivalent written notice if that buyer does not furnish seller with requested documentation within 1 day after the demand for compliance. This is becoming more consistent with all the other things we use the notification form for. You have a certain amount of time once notified to comply and either remove that contingency or turn in the requested documentation or whatever it is you're being notified for. So this just clears up the or what, and also clears up what the process is for this, and that everyone needs to be on board, understand that within your negotiated time frame, these things need to happen in this order. Okay, so home inspection. Basically, they've just taken out some what they consider to be a little bit of excessive language that is not a little superfluous. Tenant information. Once again, we're getting into leasing. We're not going to cover this in a whole lot of depth. This is just a bunch of, once again, they considered this language to be superfluous. It was geared a little bit more towards purchase. I acknowledge and understand the above material information is deemed material by the landlord. Landlord will rely on said information when determining whether to enter into a lease agreement. Once again, cleaning up with effective date, binding date. This is for your standard addendum. And remember, as Ted just said earlier, add with an addendum, you change with an amendment. Amendment to the buyer's representation agreement. Date of the buyer rep. I guess they just didn't seem to think that that was as important as being more consistent, once again, with going with the effective date. Just trying to be consistent among all the forms. The notification. This one had some really exciting changes that I love. My two favorite forms probably are the notification and special steps. So 656 and 707 are my magic numbers. Okay, so line 21, they have added appraised value did not equal or exceed the purchase price. Buyer waives the appraisal contingency in the purchase and sale agreement. In this market that we've been dealing with, especially with low inventory, you know, we are seeing a lot of waived appraisal contingencies, people that are going to be willing to meet the gap up to a certain point or are willing to roll the dice. It's, you know, if you don't have a loan, you can do that. And even if you do have a loan and you've got cash on hand, it's a strategy. This just makes it a little clearer, and it keeps us from having to figure out ways to communicate this. Also, in the pursuant to the right of refusal addendum, buyer has listed their home with a licensed real estate broker and the home is advertised in the multiple listing service where applicable. See proof of listing attached to this form. So as we were talking about earlier in the right of first refusal, this is giving us the concrete steps and bullet points in order to get through this process. I think I see some things in the chat. So let me take a break here.
I answered it, Collyn.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
You're welcome to jump in. I just didn't want to interrupt your
No,
flow,
no,
so
if you've
just
answered
trying
it, I will keep rolling.
It was lease related, so it was, I just.
Gotcha. Okay. And so once again, another protection for the seller. Pursuant with buyer's right of first refusal addendum, seller has made written demand for buyer to provide proof that the buyer has listed their home with the real estate broker advertised in the multiple listing service where applicable. However, buyer failed to do so within 1 day. Seller is hereby exercising their right to terminate the agreement. So as we were talking about before, what used to be 5 days is now negotiable. If that doesn't happen and your agreed upon time frame, your seller now has a process through the notification form to terminate and be able to move on. And everybody's got a very clear path of how to do that. For new construction, all right, I think this one's long overdue. For new construction only, seller hereby notifies buyer of a delay caused by snow, lumber price delays or lumber delivery delays, whatever it is, as provided for in the delays section of the new construction purchase and sale agreement. In the past, this has been very vague and it's been hard to enforce. It's been I've seen it as a cause of friction very frequently. And so I think when you are notifying as a builder and you are notifying a buyer of a construction delay, being able to be specific in writing is ideally going to help create a little more clarity and will give your buyers a little bit more information that's more specific as opposed to the vague builder. Well, we can delay for anything, which is kind of how the contracts sadly read in some ways. But this gives some more concrete reasoning and rationale behind delays.
Before you move into that next, I just put in the chat there, that notification form is gold. And I feel like a lot of agents don't utilize it. And we all just sort of operate in a lot of good faith that everybody's doing what they're supposed to. I can't encourage you enough. Raise the bar, use this form. And if nothing else, just read the form. Just print one out and keep it next to you and be familiar with it. Because what it's really doing is helping enforce or notify the other party, which you have contractually agreed to with your client that they will do. But I see all too often people just go, oh, like, did you do the appraisal? Yeah. I mean, it's like a phone call. And if they're even asking that. And so most of the issues that we see of performance is because nobody was making sure people were performing along the way. And make no mistake, it is as contractually obligated as you are to provide trust money, as you are to close, as you are to do an inspection, and how. And so this contract, they have done a lot of work on this. And it's been this way for many years, but agents are sort of like, yeah, we all just still do it our way. But I have had to learn my lessons where it's like, if I would have just held that buyer or that seller to their contractual obligation by using this form, simply saying like, did you get your appraisal? And you know how I handle this? I don't do any of it. I put all of my contracts with dotted and crossed, and she gets this form for every item in the contract. So for me, I recognize that this is an issue or challenge for me to keep up with. So I know this of myself. Sorry, my camera went down. I know this of myself that I wasn't going to keep up with it, but it is crucial to a smooth process. So I outsourced it to dotted and crossed. And for $300 to $400 for them to manage this, and they handle all my inspections and setting all that up and making sure all the loan obligations are done, I just can't even explain to you the change in your life in doing it. So I see Brent says most agents do not use it, and they don't. I mean, we're talking agents that are the top producers in this town. There's more likelihood that the new agents would use this form. So, you're not being a jerk by asking it, and this form allows you a respectful and appropriate way in which to enforce those terms. So again, I yield the floor, Madam Speaker, but I appreciate you letting me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. As Bobby and John used to tell us, your contracts are your sword and your shield. And that is never been more true. And the notification is a really, really great example of both. How many times has somebody called me in a panic on a Saturday and said, but they didn't do such and such. I said, did you send them notification demanding that they do?
What do you mean notification?
Oh, no, I forgot. So hopefully you guys will realize what a huge, huge tool this is for you. Just as much as the 707 is, the notification is, I think, equally as important as a way for you to create protection and tools for both sides of the transaction.
And that you have another tool in your arsenal, right? So that like, if this gets overwhelming, which it was for me, I was like, oh my God, you can tell me I've got to keep up with, did they get an appraisal? Did they get their loan in? Did they do this? I'm like, I'm not going to be able to keep up with that in addition to everything else. Outsource.
Yeah.
So it's an affordable option that you have at your disposal, dotted and crossed. And there's other contract people out there that are fantastic. Robin within Village System and many others. So.
Right. So multiple offers.
Thanks, Collyn.
Everybody is having them. Low inventory means multiple offers on lots of properties. And remember, if you were doing it right, you had to send the multiple offer disclosure notification to each and every single person that gave you an offer on this property. And if you had 13 offers, guess how long that was going to take you? Forever. Now, so it used to be that to notify, and it was that particular buyer. So if you had 13 buyers putting an offer on this property, you had to do 13 of these notifications. Now you can do one and send it to all the buyers. I think that alone, everybody in the forms committee deserves flowers. That to me was exciting. So that is a huge difference.
And if you see form problems, one of our own is on the forms committee. That
Mr.
would be
Fund.
Lee Fund. So you have a direct link to places that you see the contract needs improvement, or you have the best arsenal within the Village System of access to why and what the contract does.
Exactly. And the reason Lee is not here with us today is because he is at a Tennessee Realtors Forms Committee meeting. So, okay, continuing on with the notification. We've just got a little bit of clarification as of the date and time of this notification as follows. Any counter offer previously submitted by the seller is hereby withdrawn. Remember, there used to be one for buyers, but there wasn't one for sellers. So we've got a little bit more seller protection here in the notification just to be consistent and to provide the same kind of tools that we do for buyers and sellers. Okay, the amendment. Let's see. There we go. So once again, this is just housekeeping. The date to effective date or binding agreement date. This is all just housekeeping here. And remember, when you amend, you're changing. Oh, the other thing that came up recently, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, somebody told me that they were getting an amendment on a contract that was dead. You can't amend a contract that doesn't exist. So remember, you're only amending a live bound contract. If the offer expired or whatever, there's no amendment there. It's dead. Office exclusive listing. Okay, we were pretty excited about this one. This is, oh wait, did I skip special steps? Yes, there's just one small little thing in special steps. You guys know how much I love the 707, but there's just one little thing here of just one tiny, tiny little change in leases. Okay, so we've also got this little business. This is the most exciting change in the special steps. So office exclusive listing. All right, so clear cooperation. It's been so fun this year, right? So what we are addressing here more specifically is when you have an exempt property. So when you fill out that RealTrax form that says MLS is going to be a status exempt, you have to get me to sign it. Or your seller definitely has to sign it. Some people have been having me sign them, some people have not. It's not actually required that the broker sign all of them. Office exclusive listing. Seller wishes to keep exposure of the property minimal, does not wish to advertise property to the public. So this is when I'm talking to you guys about the word of mouth marketing. This means you cannot put it on Facebook. You cannot put the sign in the yard. Anything that's considered public marketing falls outside of this. This is when you are having an exempt property. You're going to be marketing this property word of mouth only. Now, because this language has spelled things out so nicely, one of the changes we had with Clear Cooperation since this came out, for those who did not hear it in the sales meeting, we were not allowing exempt properties to be put on the Village Facebook page or in our coming soon spreadsheet at the sales meeting, because we were afraid we couldn't really control how that information got out because it was a digital format. I think this protects us a little better. And so from now on, if you have an exempt property, you can put it as a coming soon and advertise it in the Village exclusive only page, and you can put it in our coming soons at the sales meeting. That is for Village agents only. That is inter-office marketing only. You're still not putting a sign in the yard. You're not putting it on Instagram. You're not putting it in the coming soon forums on Facebook. You are keeping it Village specific. This language, though, made us feel more comfortable about allowing that, because when Clear Cooperation first rolled out, for those who watched our Clear Cooperation class with Bobby Joe Nugent, which is on the YouTube channel, we had just decided at the time, me and Zach and Hunter, we were really kind of paranoid about how Clear Cooperation could get away from us in ways that we could accidentally make violations. So we had decided as a Village policy that we were not going to allow any digital marketing even within the office. Now with this, we can. And I am going to double check the chat because I have a feeling there will be questions about that.
Yeah, I'm just interested. Could you repeat that to make sure I'm really clear on what that allows with this digital marketing as far as with respect to Clear Co-op? That's just real important. I want to make sure I got that clear, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay, so previously with Clear Cooperation, we had said that if you were marketing this as a word of mouth property only, you could talk to all the Village agents you wanted. You could text them, you could email them, you could call them on the phone, tell them about your listing, but that we didn't want you posting it on the Village Facebook page, and we didn't want you putting it in the coming soon spreadsheet at the sales meeting. Because it was in a digital format like that, we were afraid that we couldn't control it leaving and getting outside of Village and therefore being a violation.
Got it.
We feel like this language gives us a little more cover. And so we will allow that your word of mouth marketing can include the office exclusive with this language here now in special steps, that you will be able to market to Village only and on the Facebook page and in our coming soon spreadsheet. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Thank you.
Okay. I know clear cooperation is just one big headache for everybody. It has all the best intentions, but the implementation has been so difficult for everyone. I appreciate everybody's patience with it.
And I just put in the chat, I just put the RF 707 and the 656, so you can have quick access to click and download. So it's right at your fingertips.
Well, the other thing is if you guys scroll down to, you know, the page 182 to 187 of this document will also have the 707. All of these documents are in full past these red line changes, and it just shows where the changes are in the whole document, but it was just going to be so much scrolling that I figured it might make people's eyes explode. So
it's great. Thank you.
Purchase and sale agreement timeline checklist. I don't know how many of you guys use this. It can be pretty handy if you do. This is just clearing up a little bit of language. Purchase price, closing date, contract sent. It's helping tighten up your checklist. Those of you that are using dotted and crossed, or if you're using any contract to close assistance, you probably wouldn't use this because they've probably got their own checklist. But for people that want to have checklists, this can be very handy. Holder of earnest money, trust money. That's always good information to have. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't there before. Your request for condominium association information, they have added in the sellers here, which is, you know, pretty useful. And then we've got, yes, by having the seller here, this is going to start the clock on the 10-day window. When you're requesting HOA information, by having the seller sign it, it creates a timeline for starting your 10-day window to provide that information. But if you're a listing agent at Village, you know what we want you to do. We want you to get all your HOA information up front and put it in the MLS document so that it's available immediately. That would be the best case scenario. You don't want to have to be digging for that when you've got an offer. You really want to provide that information up front. All of Village is cool, just not specific to the office you're associated with. Correct. Yes, all of Village. Back to the clear cooperation, Village marketing. It does not mean you have to only, if you're in the East office, that you can only share it to the East. You can share it to all of Village, all of our offices. So for instance, the coming soon sheet that we have at the sales meeting, that does cover all offices. It's not just 21st. So thank you, Sylvia, for asking that to clarify. Survey. Once again, you know how we talked earlier about how we've got roads that are shared with easements and things like that. Identify where roads are public or private. That's sometimes this kind of thing can come out in a title search. Other times you need a survey. This just is identifying that if this is important to your buyer, this needs to be part of their due diligence. So identify whether roads are public or private is information that may be very important to them. Commercial forms. We are not going to spend a whole lot of time on commercial forms. We are already getting short on time. And if anybody has commercial questions, we can talk about those separately, or we can loop Phil Ryan in, but we are not going to spend a lot of time on commercial form changes.
And by not a lot of time, it rhymes with Nero.
It rhymes with Nero. And actually, oh man, I'm only a minute over.
It's
We're
amazing.
at the COVID-19 release. Okay. So now let's open it up for questions for the last couple of minutes. Anybody that doesn't have any questions, we did manage to finish right on time. So you're free to run away if you so choose, because you've had enough of this. But otherwise, yeah, let's, anybody that's got questions, please feel free to unmute or put in the chat or whatever else you would like to do. Wow, we all got it? We're all ready to roll? Yes, Beth, we did have a few things that were different on the new construction contracts. We covered those earlier. This will be recorded and put on the YouTube channel. So yeah, anything, if you guys missed something and you want to go over it again, and you really want to see this again, you are welcome to.
Hey, Collins, Christopher Close.
Hey, Christopher, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Good. As far as leasebacks, rental insurance, all that stuff, obviously that's a lot of information, a lot of time. Is there a way to sit down with somebody? I'm just entering this pool now for the first time, that I'd love to get some clarification on that I could get this week or over the phone with somebody, if possible.
Sure, sure. There's a couple of agents here that actually do quite a bit. You know, the guys at MCRS Group, Matt Reed and Chad Sane and Autumn, those guys are really good at the lease end of things, and they would be probably a great resource to kind of talk you into how that business works, probably better than me, to be honest.
I'll add it as a lab. So that's something that I think would be a great lab topic. And I encourage all of you, if you have other ideas or things that you need help on, by all means, feel free to filter those our way and my way. And I'll make sure that, because likely if you have the question, there's probably at least one of another 350 agents that could benefit from that answer. And we really like to leverage information as much as we can within our community to have everybody swimming in the best way possible. So I'm going to go ahead and if you wouldn't mind, if you make connection with them, let's connect and we'll leverage that information for everybody to benefit.
Yeah, that would be great, because like I said, I'm literally buying a home that we're leasing back for 10 days to the seller, and we are renting our home that we live in existing right now. So we're entering into the pool in both ways right now. So
okay, so you're doing a temporary occupancy agreement versus
and an actual rental for 1 year. So we're doing it for both.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot going on. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. I can probably help you out with some of that. I was thinking if you were like getting into leasing large swaths of property, like starting to get into property management or something like that, then I was not going to be the best person to advise you.
Definitely not. And my wife will be handling most of the stuff for our home, our existing home.
Okay.
So to have me not be the property manager. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Can I ask a quick question about the temporary occupancy agreement again? I just gotten a little nervous about it.
Okay.
I'm glad you are nervous, because, and if anyone's using them, you should be nervous. It is an area that I think it carries a lot of risk, and it's in the form is very important. And it is a part of our business right now, especially in a seller's market, in looking at multiple offers and ways to win. So this will be part of the upcoming class, which might be tomorrow if you're not careful. So yes, go ahead with your question. You're calling number 2.
Well, my question is just that, from a buyer standpoint, what is that should be extra careful from a buyer standpoint when we have, just as you said, used that temporary occupancy agreement as a strategy to actually win, and the buyer, we did that, the seller agreed. What is the buyer's, what is the buyer should be aware of in terms of an additional agreement? I heard something about renter's insurance. Can you just go into a little more detail about who or what should be a little more cautious?
Well, if I've got buyers, I always like there to be some money held in escrow.
Oh, okay. So I did that. When you got into the renter's insurance, I was like, what? What did I miss? Okay.
Well, I mean, insurance is spelled out pretty clearly in the temporary occupancy agreement, is who's responsible for what insurance.
Right.
That part is actually spelled out very well in the temporary occupancy agreement. What isn't always spelled out is the fact that what if your buyers have allowed your sellers to stay and then they move out, they've scratched up the floors, they've dinged the drywall with the couch edge as they were moving out. And what does the contract say? When you have your final walkthrough, the home is supposed to be in what? The same or better condition.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your recourse if you've let the sellers stay in there and they damage the home so that it is in worse condition than when you had your walkthrough before closing?
Sure. Okay.
You've given them all your money. Well, what's your recourse?
Oh, okay. Okay. I feel a little better now. I just
And
misunderstood.
I imagine Ted's
how
got
much-
something to say about this too.
Well, and then there's how much deposit, like you've given, because you obviously don't want to ask for too much to be held in escrow, but what's reasonable? Because it's like, well, you're basically guessing at how much damage could they do.
Right.
Other than a total loss, just a water spigot or a toilet overflow on the second floor, that number gets big quick. And I try to just create rapport with that agent, to discuss. I like to look at it as a percentage. I see Beth Hooker just put, I always have 1,000. If the house is $1 million, one little scratch on a piece of hardwood, they're going to have to refinish that entire floor of that home if there's no transitions. So it just can get nasty quick. And so in a market that we're in, we obviously try to keep that number reasonable, but I would try to look at a percentage of the price of the home. And maybe that is 1% or 3% or something like that. That money's going to get back to them, but there's a lot of room for interpretation of what is the same or better condition. And we all know movers can easily just drag something and you've got a gouge. Or they move the master bed and underneath that, the floor is discolored from the sun. This is why occupancy agreements are so dangerous. To me, this should be a last resort of a way to win a multiple offer, is to allow occupancy pre or post closing. Having somebody else live in the possession that you just bought is dangerous, but we do it. And that's what that form is for. But what I would suggest is that just be real cautious and read that form every time you're going to use it. And consider the fact that the longer the lease, the greater the liability, especially when it comes to insurance.
Got it.
Yeah, I know that they're a necessary evil, especially in this market, but yeah, avoid them when you can.
And Beth says she has a great floor guy. So Beth, we hope that person's in the Village Facebook exclusive vendors. If they're not, would you mind putting them in there?
Yeah, exactly. If you give us your great floor guy and we can add him to the database.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, then I'm going to turn off the recording and let you get on with your day. Thank you so much.
For
hanging
Give
with
a
us.
hand to Collyn. Thank you so much, Collyn. It was a great class.
Thank you, Collyn.
You're welcome, guys. See you later.